Hello, history nerds and historians. My name is Krystina, and this is Effed Up Mythology. This is where we talk about a little tidbit from mythology that's super fucked up. Today is part 2 of Medea, that insane witchy woman that I love so much. If you haven't listened to part 1, please go back and do so because a lot of this might not make much sense. But to give a brief recap, Medea and Jason met when he was on the quest to retrieve the golden fleece from her father Aeetes. She helped him, and in doing so, completely betrayed her family and murdered her brother. They were married and then turned their sights to the throne of Iolcus, where years before Jason's uncle Peleus overthrew Jason's father Aeson. Peleus doesn't want to just give up the throne, so in a terrifying turn of events, Medea convinces the daughter of Peleus to murder him. Following this, the two flee to Corinth, where they live happy for many years and have 2 sons. And now you're all caught up without the gory details. The rest of events that we get are from Euripides' play Medea. Here's your trigger warning: abusive relationships and horrifying murders. Why the fuck do I do this to myself? So let's get started. A quick background on Euripides. He was an Athenian tragedian, meaning that he wrote Greek tragedies. He lived in the 5th century BCE and is one of only 3 tragedians whose plays survive today. The other 2 are Aeschylus and Sophocles, although he was much more popular in his time than the other 2. He wrote over 90 plays, and 80 survive that are 100% his, along with a bunch of other play fragments. He's essentially the Shakespeare of his time. And just like Shakespeare, even though some of his plays could be based on history or local mythologies, it was still a work of fiction, which might be a little problematic. But we will get to that. So the play begins with a nurse, which is probably more like a nanny for the children, or a wet nurse, which helps breastfeed the infants, and less of a medical nurse that we would consider today. This nurse laments and basically recounts everything that we've just talked about in the last episode. That if the Argo was never made and never came to Colchis, then Medea would have never met Jason and fallen in love and abandoned her family. She would have never convinced Peleus' daughter to murder their father. She never would have fled to Corinth, and her heart would not be filled with hatred now. The nurse reveals that Medea's fears that she spoke of long before she helped Jason with the Golden Fleece and married him had come to pass. He has now cast her aside and is seeking out another wife. So, what had happened was the king of Corinth, Creon, approached Jason and told him that it was unfortunate that he was married because Creon needed to find a husband for his young and super hot daughter, Glauce. And Jason was like, really? Okay, well, you see, my wife is actually a barbarian, and we were married in her lands. So it doesn't really count, right? So when do I get married? Dad. Because Jason is a wanker. Strike fucking 1. So Medea is obviously beside herself. She isn't eating and she cries all day and laments. What about his oaths? He swore to all the gods. She pushes away all of her friends. She can't even look at her children because they look so much like their father. And she just sits by herself all day and thinks of all the things she gave up and did for Jason and how it's all been in vain. And the nurse fears what Medea will do next. And we see and hear Medea crying and wishing that she was dead. The nurse warns the children to stay away from their mother, and Medea is conflicted again, just like she was when she was deciding if she wanted to help Jason when they were back on Colchis before they got married. She curses the children and says that they need to feel her wrath just like their father. And she catches herself and says, no, I love my children. Why should they have to suffer for their father and his choices and mistakes? And then says how scared she is for their safety in Corinth. And this part just totally breaks my heart reading it. And also, in reading it, I'm reminded a lot of Psyche and just how crazy she got after Cupid left her, and how all of that craziness was directly linked to her having an overabundance of love and it then being taken from her. And just like as I continue to go through these myths and listen to podcasts about myths and watch, stories about myths, I find that when Cupid or Eros is involved, these women tend to go insane. We saw it with Psyche. We're seeing it now with Medea. We see it with Dido as well, which we'll talk about at some point because her story is beautiful and very empowering until the end of it, where it becomes very tragic. But we will talk about it at some point. So all the people of Corinth hear what happened to Medea, and they are 100% on her side, but they also fear and pity her. Medea doesn't need that shit. This woman was once strong and fierce and independent. She still is, but people's pity, as good as their intentions are making her feel worthless, and it's making it so much worse for her. So not only is she betrayed by that wanker Jason, but she's also embarrassed, and you should not piss off or embarrass a witch. Medea addresses the crowd of those that love and care about her and talks about how fucked up society is when it comes to the treatment of women. That a woman's family has to pay a man to marry her, otherwise known as a dowry, and then she has to abandon her family, often move to strange lands where her husband lives, and then is expected to satisfy her husband and give him only sons. And if they're unhappy, she still has to stay and continue to do all of these things, whether she's consenting or not. And even if she's unhappy, she can't go and seek out other relationships, whether romantic or just friendly. And she can't leave or divorce her husband. But men, oh boy, if they just get like a little bit annoyed by their wives, they can just go and have other relationships and cast them aside and seek out another wife or girlfriend or friends or whatever. They can go out and experience new worlds while their obedient wives tend to the home and their children. And they think that we women have better lives because we don't fight in wars. But she says she would rather fight in 1,000 wars than give birth once and then be stuck at home facing all these injustices. Medea calls upon Themis, which is a tightness of justice and fairness and law and order. She asks her to see to the palace of Creon and his daughter Glauce, and to Jason himself. And the crowd of people outside her home that she is speaking to are fucking here for it. They're like, yes, he is a dick and he deserves anything and everything that's coming for him. And so do the king and the princess. Girl, do whatever you have to do. And these men are going to regret ever thinking that any of us are tiny and insignificant and weak. Then Creon comes to her and says, hey, so you're banished. And so are your bastard children. And Jason's like totally cool with it because he can have shiny new children with my daughter. And who wants barbarian children anyway? You fucking asshole. And he says the reason that he's banishing her is because she's so clever and scares the shit out of him. And he tells her that she needs to leave immediately. Then why the fuck did you decide to destroy her marriage, you unsalted pretzel? She tells Creon he doesn't have to fear her. I have nothing against you, after all. You just did what a good father does and found your daughter the best match, even though he was my fucking husband. And I wouldn't do anything to destroy their happiness. You know what? I'm happy for them. I mean, my husband is upsetting, but, I get it. I wish them luck and an eternal joy, but there's no need to banish me today. I accept the decision. Creon tells her that she's still banished and so are her children and they need to leave immediately. She pulls on his heartstrings as a father and asks for just one more day so that she can make arrangements for her children since Jason doesn't seem to give a fuck anymore. Creon concedes but tells her that if she's not gone by sunrise the next day, she will be executed. Strike fucking 2. But Medea doesn't care that she's been banished. She just needed the extra time to carry out her revenge. So she turns to the crowd of her friends, also known as the chorus, and is like, how should I do it? Burn their house down? stab them in the liver, hide in their bedchamber, and leap to the attack. I can't do any of that because if I get caught, they'll kill me outright. And I don't really feel like dying today. So it's gonna have to be magic. But then what? Where am I going to go after that's done? I can't stay here. I have to find some place that will take me in. And if not, then I have to be prepared to end it myself. I can't let these Corinthians kill me. Then that wanker Jason comes in and is like, this banishment is all your fault, Medea. You could have just dealt with it and accepted that I wanted to marry this other woman, but no, you had to go and talk all crazy and shit talk the king. And like, you can say whatever you want about me because I'm fucking used to it at this point, but you don't talk about my super hot new wife. This is all on you. But I'm still a good guy and I want to make sure that you and our kids have a plan for exile. And Medea calls him a dirty, cheating rat and tells him that he's lowest of the low and a fucking coward. But I'm so happy that you're here so I can give you a piece of my mind, you human equivalent of period cramps. I did everything for you. I gave up everything for you, and now you betray me and all the oaths you swore to me, and the gods watched as you cast me aside. And you know what? If it was just you and me, I could probably learn to accept it and move on, but you're also betraying our children. And where are we supposed to go, you human piece of garbage? Back to Iolcus, where I orchestrated the horrible murder of Peleus at the hands of his daughters? Or maybe to Aiaia and live with my Aunt Circe, who, when she heard of what I did for you, was disgusted and banished me from her islands. Or maybe I'll go back to Colchis, where I betrayed my father when I helped you steal the golden fleece and then murdered my brother and cut him into tiny pieces and threw them into the ocean. Man, I just have so many great options before me. I get to be a hated refugee traveling with my abandoned children, and they can be beggars, and we can live on the street. What a wonderful life for your children and the woman who saved your life 100 fucking times over. And Jason's like, well, now I have to prove to you that I'm actually a good guy. You actually didn't do anything for me, Medea. Aphrodite, and Aphrodite alone, led me safely on my voyages, and she's clearly the one who made you help me and keep me safe. And you benefit way more from our marriage than I do. I mean, you live in Greece, not like a yucky barbarian land. You learned about real law and order, and everyone knows about you and how amazing you are with all that magic stuff. And everyone knows how clever you are now. And because of me, you got to experience all of this, and I don't ask for anything in return. And now you're getting all mad at me that I made this match. Like, I did this for us. I would have come to resent you if I didn't leave you for this hot new bride, and like I can have more children with her and give our children brothers and sisters, and they'll be princes and princesses. And you just don't understand how amazing this is because you're just a woman, and all you can think about is who's laying beside you in your bed. Do you understand me now, Medea? Because actually, I'm a great guy. So the chorus calls him out on his shit and it's like, don't you paint a fucking beautiful sparkling picture when in actuality you are fucking over your wife. You're being a dick, dude. And you might be the reason the middle finger was invented. And just so my listeners know, I've now integrated myself into the chorus and I'm also speaking to Jason, but the lines between me and them have now been blurred. I don't know where I end anymore. What is life? What is existence? So Medea says, well, maybe it's just because I'm a yucky barbarian, but I think people who can say beautiful words while hiding a rotten heart are the worst of the worst and should be punished in the worst way, especially because it shows that they won't stop short of anything and do whatever the fuck they want with a smile on their face. So don't come at me and talk about how great you are and how wonderful you are when I think you're just a coward. No, don't interrupt me because if you weren't a filthy, disgusting coward of a man, you'd have told me to my face that you were planning on marrying someone else. And Jason's like, oh, yeah, you would have been so nice and accepting of it because you're reacting so well now. I'm sorry. Did the middle of my sentence interrupt the beginning of yours? No, sweet husband of mine, you didn't tell me because I'm not Greek, and a non-Greek wife would not enhance your status. And you can't be a king and have the people support you with a barbarian wife. Jason tells her, let me make it clear to you and tell you again, I'm not marrying Glousy because of her and how attractive or unattractive she is. I'm doing this to keep you and our children safe. And you're sitting here pitying yourself when actually you are really, really lucky. So don't blame me. Who the fuck am I supposed to blame, Jason? Medea says, tell me, is your ass jealous of the shit that's spewing out of your mouth? Did I get into bed with another woman and betray my marriage vows and my children? Because please explain to me exactly what I did. I'll wait. Jason tells her that it's because she cursed the royal house. Medea responds, you know what? I did, and I extend that curse to you. Then Jason says he's done with her, and if she needs any help to get her and the boys through the exile, to just let him know, and he can talk to some of his friends because he's still a nice guy. Medea refuses and tells him that she will not beg, and he tells her that she's stupid and asks for all the gods and goddesses to look down and see how he tries to help her and how she spurns him. See how wonderful I am, gods and goddesses, and see how terrible my wife is. I'm such a nice guy, actually. Medea tells him, you know, I'd agree with you, but then we'd both be wrong. So go back to your new bride. You must be longing for her after being away from her for so long. And one more thing, and I want you to listen to me very closely, dear husband of mine. Strike fucking 3. So Jason leaves, and then Aegeus, king of Athens, comes in. He's passing through Corinth after seeking guidance from the oracle of Apollo. How convenient. They talk a little bit about his prophecy, and I honestly didn't really take the time to try to discern because the specifics aren't important to this story. It's basically just that he doesn't have any children and wanted to know if he ever would. And then, wonderful Aegeus asks her why her cheeks look as though they're stained with tears. She briefly explains to him what happened, and unlike every other man in this story, he shows compassion. He asks her exactly what happened and how she's doing, and says that he can't believe that someone would treat her like that. Fuck Jason. He's terrible. You know what? Fuck Creon too. He swears by the earth and the sun and the entire pantheon of the deities that if she can get herself to Athens, that she will have asylum. He will not cast her out. He will not turn her over to any of the Corinthians. He will not abandon her. And finally, I'm sitting here like, a man who isn't fucking terrible. And yet, everyone has the potential for disappointment. They then say goodbye to each other, and Medea now conveniently has a safe place to flee to. So she asks a servant to go tell Jason that she wishes to speak to him again now that she's cooled off. And when he arrives, she tells them, I'm sorry. You're right. I approve of your marriage. She calls her children out of the house and embraces them, and they embrace their father, and she asks them if they will live many years. And a tear comes to her eye. Jason thanks Medea for finally coming to her senses and says that he will talk to King Creon and try to arrange for the children to stay and be safe and be raised with their future brothers and sisters. And Medea starts crying. And she says it's because she's just thinking about her children and all that will happen to them in Corinth, and wishes that this could come to pass, and that she will send gifts to Princess Glousy to try to convince them more to let the children stay, to show that there are no hard feelings. She will send her a beautiful spun dress from Helios himself and a crown worthy of her radiant beauty. Medea gives these gifts to her children, wrapped in a neat little box, and tells them to bring them to the princess straight away. And it works. The boys come back, and Medea is told that they are free from their banishment, and they are there to say goodbye. Medea begins crying again. She talks about all the things that she will miss in their lives, like them growing up and getting married. She says, I had these high hopes that I would watch your lives, and then you would care for me in my old age. And when my time comes, you would be the ones to perform the funeral rites. Such happy thoughts. I'm such a fool. Maybe I will take you with me after all. No, I can't do that, because your father must know that I am not weak, but deadly to my enemies, and I will stop at nothing. And then Medea embraces them and sends them inside. So a servant enters and tells her that what she's done is terrible, and she has to flee immediately. Medea asks what exactly she's done, and the servant recounts the terrible events. The children entered the city with the beautiful gifts, and we were so happy to hear that you and Jason made up and the children would stay. And the boys brought the dress and the crown to Princess Glauce. But when she saw them, she looked at them with disgust and turned away. But Jason chastised his new wife and told her to look upon them and regard them as her own and accept the presents as a peace offering in the beginning of a happy life. So she did. She put on the dress and the crown and paraded around the room so happy and gazing at herself in the mirror whenever she caught sight. And then, out of nowhere, she was consumed by some poison that turned to fire. King Creon ran in and embraced her. He lamented for his poor daughter and screamed out that he wished that he could die with her. But when he pulled away, the dress clung to him, and soon he was engulfed in flames. They're dead. They're all dead, Medea. What have you done? Upon hearing the news, Medea is happy, but also stricken with remorse. Not for Creon and Glauce, but for what she has to do next. Trigger warning. Again, terribleness. This is when it gets like really, really terrible. Okay? Medea enters the house and tells herself to be strong, that she must do this. She must kill her sons. Because of their connection with what just happened to the king and to Glauce, and with Medea herself, she cannot leave them to the Corinthians. They will kill them, and they will kill them terribly. But she can't take them with her. She won't be able to outrun Creon and Jason's men. And she was the one who birthed them and nursed them, and she had to be the one to kill them. Besides, she isn't done with Jason yet. The death of his wife and new father-in-law was terrible, but this will hurt him most of all. And she carries steel and stones within her. She locks the door, and the chorus watches in horror, and they plead to the gods to intervene and to stop her, and nothing happens. They try to go in and help, but the doors are barred from inside, and they can't break them down. They're hearing the cries of help from the children, and they can do nothing, and eventually the cries stop. And immediately after they stop, Jason enters and asks the chorus of women if they know where Medea is, and more importantly, where are his sons, because he's coming to rescue them from the clutches of Creon's men. He's come to save them, but he is too late. Medea appears above on the roof in her dragon chariot with the bodies of her sons, and Jason yells, saying that he should have known that this would happen, because it's clear to him now that he's cursed, and this is what he gets for sitting by while she murdered her brother and Peleus. This is what he gets for marrying a barbarian. He calls her a monster, worse than the six-headed man-eater Scylla, and that she will suffer as well with what she has done. She agrees. She will suffer. But that it's worth it. Jason says, "My poor children, what a vicious mother you have." And Medea says, "My poor children, what a sad end you've met, thanks to your father and his arrogance." Jason asks for the children so he can bury them properly, and she refuses. She says that she will bring them to Hera's shrine and bury them there herself so that no one will ever disturb them. And with that, she flies off in her dragon chariot, and the play ends. Now it's said that after she buries her sons, she fled to Athens, where she was purified and protected by Aegeus. And not just protected, but she married him, and together they have a son, exactly what he longed for. And they were happy for a while. Until Theseus came to Athens. Medea knew who this was. It was Aegeus' son. But Aegeus didn't know, and Medea convinced him that this man was a threat and needed to be disposed of. And she concocted a poison for him. Because he was a threat, just not to Aegeus. At least not at the moment. He was a threat to her infant son, who would lose everything to this firstborn child. But right before Theseus drank the poison, Aegeus noticed the sword at his hip. A sword that was once his, that he left behind with a woman years ago to give to his child, if it was a boy, when he came of age. Aegeus knocks the cup from Medea's hand and embraces Theseus, and then immediately banishes Medea. More about Theseus later, though. We have a lot to talk about with him, but just not today. It said that Medea fled back to Colchis with her son and learned that her father had been overthrown by his brother. So in true Medea fashion, she promptly murders her uncle, returns Aeetes to the throne, and lived out the rest of her days in her home that she never should have fucking left. And what happened to Jason? Well, one day he was on the beach by the old and dilapidated Argo when a piece broke off, struck him in the head, and killed him instantly. And that's the super fucked up story of Medea. And I don't hate her until the end when she kills her children. Like, she could have just left and taken her children with her and lived happily ever after or whatever, because fuck that wanker Jason. She could have been so much better off without him. But with that in mind, let's quickly talk about the play, because I mentioned that Euripides' version may be a little problematic. So there are two versions that I read where the ending is very different. Didymus, one of the most celebrated Greek scholars that lived around the transition from BCE to CE, wrote that Medea didn't actually murder her children to get back at her husband, or at all, for that matter. She did murder King Creon while she was living in Corinth. Medea poisoned him and fled to Athens, but her children were too small to accompany her, and they were just weighing her down. So she left them at the altar of Hera, where Jason was supposed to take care of them. But before Jason could retrieve them, they were killed by Creon's relatives, who then spread this rumor of the crazy Medea, who murdered her children and Creon, to make people hate her. Because if there's anything that people hate most, it's the murder of innocent children. I mean, just think back at how outraged Medea was when they got the news that Peleus killed Jason's infant brother, and the lengths that she then went to get back at him on her husband's behalf. This would make her a complete hypocrite. The other theory says that she did kill the children, but it was an accident. So similar to what she did before with Jason's father, Aeson, she was attempting to make the children immortal, so that no matter what happened to them, or what the people of Corinth tried to do to them, they wouldn't die. But if you remember when she was performing the crazy spell to restore youth to Aeson, she told everyone that no one could look at what she was doing or they would ruin it. So the thought is that she was in the middle of this spell when the servant interrupted her and he ruined it, and the children perished as a result. So then naturally, the next question is, if we have these two theories of what actually happened, why did she kill her children in the play? Well, I haven't really read anything about this specifically, but I have theories. So the first is the concept of catharsis. Catharsis was what the Greek tragedies were going for. People would attend the theater, watch these terrible things, and cry their eyes out, and their hearts would break for the characters on the stage. But in releasing all of these emotions, they would walk away feeling better. And I mean, we still do that now with movies. But this could have been accomplished with the other two endings I just talked about. So what I really think the reason behind her murdering her children is something that brings together so many terrible people in the world, unfortunately. Racism and xenophobia. They talk all throughout the story, not just the play, about how she's an outsider and a barbarian, and how Jason would never be successful married to her, and he was cursed for marrying her, and he should have known that this would be his fate for marrying such an abomination or whatever. And that makes so much sense to me, because it's not necessarily that it seems out of character for Medea murdering her children, because at this point she's a serial killer, but She seems to love her children so much. And in a lot of the translations that I read, she comes to the conclusion that she has to kill her children without hesitation. It's literally like, well, I'll kill Creon and Glaucie and then my kids, and then I'll be free of Jason, and then he'll be sad. That's one of the reasons why I liked the translation that I read by Oliver Taplin, because it really emphasizes the remorse and hesitation that she has about it, and that it's like a mercy to them. But I mean, I don't know. What do y'all think? Let me know in the comments, or shoot me a message what your theories are about Medea. Thank you so much for listening today. If you have a story from history or mythology that you'd like to hear me discuss, please let me know. I'd love to hear it. And I'm always looking for new ideas to add to my very, very long list. And if you like what you heard today and you want to hear me talk more, please consider subscribing. And remember, history may be watching you, so don't fuck it up. Bye.